Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and it is now Saturday, the 5th of October. It's a it's a beautiful morning. Morning, Alex. For once, we've got some sun. I think they keep pushing the weather forecast back, though. They're like, oh, it's going to be so nice and cool. Good morning, Joanne. It's going to be so nice and cool this weekend, and then now they're like, oh, well, maybe after Tuesday you're going to get that autumn weather, and I'm like, But anyway, morning, Pat. Yeah, so I don't know what today's going to end up being. I mean, well, it's going to be nice. I don't know how hot it's going to be. Like yesterday, I was surprised. I walked outside and it was actually kind of humid, and I was just like, okay, because I had to go to the store yesterday. My car is done, and they did call me like yesterday afternoon to say I could pick it up, but I was like, well, I said I'll have to pick it up Monday because I had too much going on Friday afternoon. I had phone calls and stuff that I had to do, so I'm going to be picking my car up Monday. Plus, I had to arrange for a pickup from the rental car place. So, yay! Yeah, I know. It's of course, then I got to pay for the deductible, so boo on that. But but I'll be returning the car to the rental place on Monday. So, which means that I'm probably not going to do a Monday live stream because they said in order for me to get a ride, they want me to come early. They're like, "Can you come like 8:30 in the morning?" And I'm like, "Okay, I just want to get this exchange done." So Monday I probably won't be doing this, but but yeah, I'll be here today. Obviously, I'm here today, and I'll be here tomorrow. And I do have some of these to upload to YouTube. I've been remiss about doing that, but there's been, obviously, as many of you know, there's a whole lot going on. And I'm still trying to negotiate stuff. Still spending time online with Wix. I should probably log the number of hours that I spend with Wix support because nothing works as advertised. We did discover, by the way, those of you who are in the class, I've added everybody to the group. There's an ISFM students group. And I also have an instructors group too. But in order for you to see anything with the group, you have to be logged in on the site. So you might just log yourself in on the ISFM site. I've also noticed that if you're on multiple Wix sites, it's kind of allowing you to use the same logins, which I'm not excited about. Even though like the people who are logging in, it's like not really a big deal that it's a login between the same sites, but I wouldn't want somebody who's just just from the outside, who just deciding to suddenly they're gonna try to join and log in. Although I don't think they can really join the group anyway unless I add them, so I guess that's okay. But I've been on the phone with them ridiculous numbers of times just to do simple things, and I think the thing that we had discovered was that if you get an email saying, oh, there's a new message in your group, and you go to click on the link to go to the group, it'll tell you the group doesn't exist. And that's because it's hidden on the site. It's hidden from the public. Once you're logged in, then you can see it. But I'm like, why doesn't the message say, log in to see this group? Do I need to do something? Yeah, I saw that. I know, it's ridiculous. You have to go log in, and then if you go to the group, and I'm not even sure that the group link is up there, so I need to actually that's something I should do. I want to make sure I add the group link for students. Or it might actually be in your account that you belong to certain groups, but you have to do everything that way. Joanne, actually, it would be sent to your Gmail, but I don't know, but check, because I sent the link. I sent it two ways. I sent the links to the class via the last class we had, Transition Lake Code, then it let me view the group. Yeah, and that's the thing. There should have been a login for the one, but maybe it didn't ask you to create one because you already had one for the other site. But that's my thing. I have multiple sites that are for different purposes, and it shouldn't be like, oh, okay. I guess maybe in one sense, maybe it's convenient if you have a login on one site, you can do it on another, but that, I feel like there's so many potential security issues with that too, just as a former IT person. So I don't know. It's probably going to be more time with Wix, but just trying to figure this out. But when I look through it, there's something that might be able to be changed in the SSO. Yes, thank you, and thank you for informing me of that, because, like I said, I don't know what it looks like as the owner of the site. Other people log in and they tell me what they see. So I might want to try to create a link to the group that's just going to be easy. Once you're logged in, that it's just easy. You can just get into it. But why they don't have it set up that way? Why it's just like, nope, this group doesn't exist. It's like. Yeah, I'll check later. Darn, I forgot to sign up for Sunday. Yesterday sucked. Oh, I'm sorry to hear. Oh, I know. I think you had a loss yesterday that you mentioned. I'm very sorry. Yeah, you have time to sign up for Sunday. There's no there's no limit on that. whatever you do today. Yeah, and in the email, I have an email from Katonia.net, which apparently, even though Katonia.net is, oh God, I'm so sorry, that's horrible. Yeah, you were just mentioning, yeah, that it was somebody took their own life, so that's really terrible. I'm sorry. It's so yeah, it's just yeah. So I send things from Katonia.net, and it's authenticated, which should be an authenticated site through Bluehost and through WordPress. But for some reason, when you authenticate it, it doesn't send your messages to spam. But apparently, it's sending a lot of things to spam. So I've got that problem, and then I've got the problem of people who are actually signed on Wix, and part of the group, it's saying, like, oh, when you go to click on the link, it's telling you it doesn't exist. So it's like, go back, log into the site, and then click on the link and go in, which is just, I'm just getting frustrated because I'm like, this should all be, we live in the 21st century. This should be easy, one click. That's the whole point of me getting away from WordPress, which people remember the WordPress MemberPress thing. It was an absolute disaster. If you think Wix is bad, that was 10 times worse. So Wix is a step up, but it still leaves a lot to be desired. So anyway, there's just been a lot of the hairy unraveling we have as we're using something for the first time. Thank you. It's my up my game for help for first responders. Yeah, that is a tough thing to contend with when that happens. So I'm very sorry about that, Joanne. And when you're dealing, well, I mean, you have more training in the mental health, can't even speak. You have more credentials in the mental health profession with regard to that, with regard to your background. But I've also been trained in grief counseling, and I'm also a coach. I've been trained in coaching, and I mean, it doesn't change the sense of it when you're somebody who works with people, like how devastating that is. So, okay. So I was going to talk about today a couple of things. Okay, because we have our ghost story for today because it is October, and this one's actually kind of an interesting one. And I referred to it the other day, and of course, I'm right now referring to the ones that I kind of have backstories for. And I'm going to do that, and then I think the topic that I'm going to talk about today has to do with limitation, particularly how limitations can lead to freedom, which is kind of a weird thing, but that's a topic that came up into my mind today. Yes, spooky stuff, trauma, PTSD, and crisis intervention. Yeah, it's well, yeah, when people are suffering with that kind of stuff, there's a lot of people. I mean, certainly military people who are associated with the PTSD for sure. But yeah, it's just I don't know. We live in a society that's way too anxiety ridden. So I'll get into the your certs. Oh, yeah, that's what your certs are. But yes, well, exactly, and that's what But it's something that's so prevalent in this society. And when you have those certifications, they're super important, but they also can be very emotional. They can be very emotional for you, as the person who is, who's the person who's trying to be in that kind of space. Having that kind of certification and that kind of feeling like you have that kind of responsibility too. So, all right. So let me start with the story, and then I'm going to get into the. Showed no signs. Yeah, that's sometimes, I know, that's just it. And that actually kind of gets into something else I was thinking about. But anyway, I don't want to derail myself into too many different topics. Okay. So the story, I alluded to this story a little bit the other day, and I'm going to be giving a summary of it. Because there is a written version that exists. Where did I read this? It was in the Oxford Book of Ghost Stories was the last place that I saw it, but it's been in many anthologies. In fact, there's one anthology I had seen that was illustrated. There was an Edward Gorey illustration for it, which was great. And I'm a big fan. In fact, my Edward Gorey stuff, I'm going to be going back up for sale. If anybody's a Gorey fan, I'll send you my eBay link so you can check it out, because I'm trying to unload. I still have a certain amount that I've kept, but there's a certain amount I've been still trying to unload. And eBay, I think, only puts it up for a week and then takes it down now because it's been up so many times. But, so the story is called Man Size in Marble. And it's by a woman named Edith Nesbit, who actually does have a bit of an occultish background. I feel like she might have been connected to the Golden Dawn and possibly to Yeats in terms of some of these. I don't remember if she had a connection to Yeats or not. I thought somebody had told me that, but I remember somebody had explained to me what her esoteric connections were. But anyway, obviously she was writing in kind of the early 20th century, late 19th century kind of stuff, and so there's a style that's reflected there, and this story is actually written in a way. I think some of the dialogue, because it's told from the point of view of the husband. There's a husband and a wife. Okay, so the husband's a writer, and the wife, she's like, I think they both write, and they, she plays piano and things. They're basically like two writers trying to cobble a living together. They're married, they're deeply in love, they're young, and they decide that they're looking for like this perfect little house where they can do their writing, and none of the places really are suitable. But then he just finds this really, really perfect little place in an area called. I'll talk about the area that it's in, but it's in England. It's in southeast England, and they find this little cottage that's at the perfect price, and they're there, and they have a woman who comes into the house, because that was, of course, the way that it was. Who did the cleaning and the cooking and all that kind of stuff, and they were spending their time doing their writing and their art and things like that. So it was a nice little thing. But the language in it's very flowery. The husband's got very romantic towards his wife and his sweet little dove, and kind of the ways he talks about her and stuff in this story. So the two of them are there, and they're very happy. And then, one day the wife comes to the husband, and of course she bursts into tears. She's very, very upset, and he says, "Well, what's the matter? What's wrong?" And he says, "It was they're cleaning. The woman who was taking care of their house, the woman who was the cook and the and who cleaned for them, said that she needed to go away. She was leaving, and because her niece was sick, and she had to go take care of her." And they thought, well, her niece has been sick for a very long time. Why now, all of a sudden, does she feel that she has to go? And she tells them, "Oh no, I'm only going to be gone. This is October. It's probably getting around this time." She was going to be gone for like 2 weeks, something like that. She says, "I'm going to be gone." It was from roughly like she was going to be gone by like October 29th, 30th, and she wasn't going to be back until like maybe the second week of November. Okay, and so now. It's always interesting to me how certain people, it's just kind of like, you mean I have to cook and clean the house? And it's like, it's really not that big of a deal. But in those days, that was a big deal. So it was like, so now she was not going to be able to tend to her work because she had to, and again, they were just writing pieces and trying to get them sold to try to, they were living on a shoestring, basically. So they were like, okay, well, we're going to have to take care of it. And the husband, and so they're talking to the woman, and they're like, well, why do you need to go to see your niece now? Like, they were so upset. Can we increase your wages? Can we do whatever? And she says, no, it's nothing like that. It's fine. And, but she's not really telling them why she plans to go away for this period of time, because they think the whole niece thing is probably bunk, like it's not, there's something that does not ring true about this. And finally she admits to them that there's a local legend. Now there's a church near where they are that's on the top of this hill. They live in this little house kind of right near this little, you can see the church from the top. And of course the two of them, the husband and wife, have visited the village. They've gone around, they've seen the church, they've gone in, and they were talking about and she said there's those effigy, they were talking about that. She said, she mentions the church, and they said, oh, you mean the church with the effigies? Because what there is there's like two memorials, like monuments, and they show these two stone like knights just laying there, and of course they're sculpted right on top of these two graves, and so they said, oh, you mean the effigies? And she says, no, I mean I mean those man-sized things drawn out in marble. So that's where the title comes from. And what she explains to them is that these men were actually very, very wicked. Like, they were knights, but they were ruthless, they were vicious, they were wicked. And they didn't really want them buried in the church when they died, but they ended up being there. And supposedly every October 31st, night of October 30th into the 31st, which is like the anniversary of their death, they get up and they walk around about at midnight. Now, of course, they think this idea sounds ridiculous. You know, the idea that you're going to have these marble effigies that are going to get up and start walking around. And but she just said, I'm not going to be anywhere near this house. You know, you can believe whatever you want. She says, and I recommend that you lock the doors, lock the windows, like don't let anything in. And so naturally, this kind of preys on the imagination of both of them. But as if you think about this, if somebody told you this, you'd be kind of stuck between being nervous about it and thinking rationally that it just sounds like, you know, it sounds like the proverbial old wives' tale, right? So, okay, so in any case, the husband and wife, they manage to deal with the fact that this woman's gone away. They do the cooking together. They decide, you know, they're going to kind of try to have fun with it, and you know, and they spend the time together. They manage to get through the chores and everything, and you know, they're feeling a little bit better about the fact that she's not. They would prefer her to be there, but they're happy. Good morning, Suda. They're happy about the fact that she's not there. Or they're not as unhappy about the fact that she's not there. So, so finally, this evening of October 30th comes, and when it comes, she is. So they are. You know, they're having like a very nice day together. They go out. You know, they go shopping in the village. They go. You know, they are in the house together. They're having like a really romantic evening. They're playing the piano together. It's like a really beautiful. You know, kind of a day. They're having just a really wonderful day, and they decide to take a walk in the evening by the churchyard. Okay, and so they're walking, and of course she kind of gets this shudder because she's remembering what the woman said. But the husband, you know, so they walk around, they go back, they lock up the house. You know, they just think, okay, we don't know if this is real or not, but we're going to lock the house up. So then, but then he decides he wants to go out and have a cigar and take a little walk as it gets closer to midnight. So she, you know, she's there. She's kind of fallen asleep. She's like in front of the fireplace, and she's fallen asleep in her chair. So he gets up and he goes out. And so as he's going out, he goes out and he decides to just take a little walk. He walks over. There's like a little tavern or pub nearby, and he pops in. You know, has a drink, says hello to a couple people, and then decides to go take a walk back. And as he's walking back, now he's sort of forgetting that this is the day, right? And because he's lost in his thoughts, and then he notices that it's almost midnight and the church door is open. And he's like, why is the church door open? So he decides to take a walk up and take a look. And he looks inside, and to his absolute horror, both marble effigies are gone. They're not there. And now he's like in a panic because he's thinking like, this just couldn't be. And so he runs out, he's frantic, he wants to run back to his house, just make sure everything's going to be, his wife is okay. And then he gets stopped, he runs into somebody along the way, and it turns out to be a doctor who's like, whoa, calm down, what are you upset about, what's going on? And so he explains to the doctor, the effigies are gone from the church. And he's like, you've been drinking, you know, you're not seeing things correctly. And he's like, I'm telling you, they're not in there. So they're standing there and they're kind of arguing about it. And the doctor's like, look, let's go back together and we'll go look. And we'll make sure. So he says, fine. So they go back together. And when he goes in, to his surprise, both effigies are there. And he's thinking like, oh, maybe it's my mind. He's relieved. He's like, oh, maybe my mind's playing tricks on me. And the doctor said, yeah, see, they're here the whole time. You know, you're just got a case of nerves and so forth. Although he does note that the finger is broken on one of them. They have the fingers are like drawn out, and the finger is like the pinky finger's busted on one of them, or one of the fingers. So he thought, oh, somebody must, maybe that got damaged. But basically the doctor is talking to him about the reasoning with him about how the mind works and how, we can't trust what our senses tell us and things like that. So feeling a lot better after talking to the doctor, feeling very grateful, he walks back to his house, but he realizes the door is open to his house. And he thought, didn't I lock the door when I left? Well, apparently he forgot to lock the door when he left. So he walks back into his house. Now he's nervous. He walks back in and he's calling for his wife, and she's still in her chair. And so he walks around, but when he goes to talk to her, she's got this expression on her face of absolute terror, and her fists are clenched like this. And when he tries to wake her up, he realizes she's not breathing. She's dead. And he is just beside himself, but he's so he calls for the doctor again and comes in, and the woman is her fist is clenched so tightly, and he kind of takes it and he tries to pry her fingers open because she's got her hands around something, and when she opens it up, she's got a marble finger in her hand. Okay, so yeah, it's a pretty creepy story. Okay, and that's where it ends. And Suda, I'm sorry, you came in a little late for this one. This is a story called Man Size in Marble. Ooh, yeah. So it's now. So what's the Brigid backstory with regard to this ghost story? Well, the last time, well, I mean, it might not be the last time that I've read this story, but as people know, as I've talked about, that is super creepy. You could picture it. Yeah, and to the point of actually picturing it. I was in England. I was staying with my friend Louise when I first quit my job. Lou had said to me, "Why don't you come stay at my house in England for a month?" And I like Lou. She's great. But she's she's busy. She's got a lot of her own stuff going on. But and she, at that time, we were doing some marketing work together. Like she was doing some marketing for my thing. Eventually, I decided I need to do my own marketing work because even though she was giving it really a good try, she wasn't quite hitting the mark of what I was doing. So anyway, that's decided. But it was very generous of her to let me stay with her. I mean, I paid for my own food and stuff like that. But and we would go places together. Since I was there, we would go visit old churchyards. We were near Pluckley, like the most haunted village in England was like one town over from where we were living, and this is in southeast England. You mentioned that. So she says, so I was sitting in. We decided one day, like for some reason, we both decided we wanted to go for a massage, and there was a woman in a nearby town who was doing it like for a pretty reasonable rate. It was like £40 for like an hour or something, which was really reasonable. So she booked one. She said, let's both book one, right? Let's go do that. And she was doing it kind of in her shed in the back of her garden. Like she had like a big enough space that she had like her massage table out there and everything. It was nice. And so Louise decided she would go first. So I went and sat in, there was a park across the street where people are out walking their dogs and stuff. And I had my book of Oxford ghost stories, and I was reading this exact story. And as I'm reading the story, I'm reading the first opening paragraphs, and the name of the town comes into view. They said it's not far from the sea, and it's called Brenzett. And I went, where have I just seen that name recently? Where have I seen the word Brenzett? And then I realized that when Louise and I are driving around, there's signs for Brenzett all over the place. Brenzett, like 3 kilometers away. So when we were done with our massage and we were going back to her house, I said, "Hey, Louise," I said, "Have you heard? Is Brenzett around here?" She's like, "Oh yeah, it's like just over there." And so I explained to her about this ghost story, and she's like, "No way, that's so cool." She's like, she says, "We got to go over. Well, we're going to take a drive over. We didn't do it immediately, but we're going to drive over to Brenzett." So I went and looked this story up, and I looked up the church. And as it turns out, this story is based on a real location. I mean, the effigies in the church are not 2 like evil knights. They're actually 2 noblemen or something that are buried in this church. And the church is called St. Eanswythe. And it's in the town of Brenzett. So I actually have pictures not only of this church, but of the 2 man-size in marble effigies. And I was on a page for, I forget which it was. I don't know if it was the E.F. Benson page. It was one of the ghost story pages that I belong to, and somebody brought this story up, and I was able to post my picture of the marble effigies. But I'll post it on here just so people can see it. But yeah, it was, and the church itself is a little bit spooky, and it is kind of on a hill. It's beautiful. Yeah, it was cool. That was because that's literally something I did not expect. When I saw the thing, I was like, wait, this is a place, and because he was saying, oh, it's like 20 minutes from the sea, and I'm like, yeah, Dungeness is about 20-30 minutes away. It's not. I'm like, this seems to be the area that this takes place. So it was really cool. So that was my my ghost story of the day. It has to do with man-size in marble. And it was very, very spooky. I mean, like I said, reading the original, you can get more flavor of it than what I'm giving you in this kind of abbreviated version. But it's and sorry, there's spoilers there because I'm not telling you how the story ends. But it was just so weird. I was like, wow. That was just kind of one of those weird literary accidents. Like, okay, I happen to be staying like 2 towns over from Brenzett, and so we were able to go visit. Louise was really nice. She actually took me around to a lot of places, a lot of old, old churches, and we looked at old graveyards and things, and a lot of cool stuff over in her neck of the woods. And we were at the graveyard in Pluckley, which is supposed to be super haunted, at I think it was 10, 11 o'clock at night. Her friend Jackie, myself, and her, we were wandering around, and I actually have some creepy video from that where there's like shadows that don't belong there kind of following around. So yeah, that was a fun little trip when I stayed with her for about a month when I was getting my bearings again after quitting my job and getting my business started. So okay, so what was I going to talk about today? I was going to talk about limitations, right? Because one of the things that kind of occurred to me this morning, I've been waking up these mornings and I don't know, like we were talking about October as kind of being this month of transformation and these changes. And it's interesting, Mars has been in Cancer all month, and I'm really feeling that because there have just been certain people in certain situations that have, nobody here. I'm just going to say that right off. Nobody on this live stream. But there's just been certain people in situations that have really been testing my Mars energy this month. And I'm like, okay. But I also noticed this month too, there have been a lot of things because a lot of the aspects are potential landmines for global escalation. Now, mind you, we're only at the 5th of October, so it's not like we've got all month. And actually into the first week of November, saying Mars in Cancer going into shadow period is intense. Yeah, it's just, there's just been some things where I'm like, okay, I really have to be careful not to get my buttons pushed. So I'm like, take a deep breath and remember the astrology right now. Because, and so far so good, but, but for example, like Pat had brought up, the fact that there was that Iranian strike on Israel. And then we thought, oh my gosh, how huge solar flare M9 today. Oh, okay. All right. Well, good. Forewarned is forearmed. Yeah. And there have been, we were discussing that actually a couple days ago, about, like, I think Pat was talking about how intense the energy seems to be outside. There you go. The solar flares, major solar flares. And I think they were saying actually that the aurora would have been visible where I live, which is very unusual. Although last night it was very cloudy, so we weren't really able to see anything of any type. It did get nice by the morning, but maybe tonight there'll be something. But that's really having an effect on our energy fields. And but also we had that longshoreman strike here down on the East Coast where they thought had an M7 yesterday. Wow. We had the longshoreman strike, and people were freaking out. Like, I went to the grocery store the other day, and there was no toilet paper. I mean, fortunately, I don't need it right now, but I was like, yeah. Because people were talking about people were going out panic buying because they were being told, like, oh my God, there's a strike, the world's going to end, you're not going to have anything in your stores, they're all going to be empty, and it's like, and toilet paper happens to be the one thing that's made in the USA and shipped from the USA, so longshoremen, I mean, the ports have to do with what's being brought in internationally. So panic buying TP is so bizarre. I know, yeah. And I went in and I'm looking and I'm like, really? But the strike's already been settled. I mean, or at least the contract's been extended through mid-January, and there's going to be time to negotiate other things, and apparently they've gotten a pay raise too. So that got handled very, very quickly, and from what I heard the other day, they said, yeah, probably the supply issues with people panic buying will probably be sorted out within about 2 weeks. Right, like bananas. I heard that was at stake, like fruits. Yeah, like chocolate, bananas, what was it? If you needed a bulldozer. Yeah, I mean, I think the Daily Show was goofing on that. Like, oh my God, I needed a dozen bulldozers for tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah, that was another thing too. I don't tend to buy a whole lot of fruit. Coffee. Oh yeah, protecting my coffee here. But not toilet paper, no. Toilet paper, like, I think one of my friends posted on Facebook, she's like, people, here's where all the toilet paper factories are, and they're all in the USA. She's like, you're fine. So it's just, but it's interesting because right now what we're seeing is the potential for something to escalate, but then it doesn't. And so far that's kind of going along with what Azrael has told me, which is that, yeah, it looks like things are gonna, like, you know, like the world's going to end and it's going to blow up. He's like, but it's not. And yeah, it's like the high spikes who, you know, in these different situations. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And really, but think about that. What's going on is more a mental speculation about what might happen rather than what actually happened. Okay? So it's a good example of that 8-9 of swords energy we've been talking about recently, where people, an idea is put into their head and then they, exactly what Azrael's been saying, the mind, yeah. And he's just like, no, it's not going to be anywhere near as catastrophic. And this is why, you know, it's like people like Joanne saying taking like a social media fast or, you know, a diet. Of course, except for this, you got to watch this, right? But social media fast and stuff. And because right now, a lot of what you see is going to be potentially like pouring gasoline on a fire. And it's not, you know, we have to be able to take a step back and go, okay, let's not get caught up in this. Let's not get caught up in this maelstrom. But it made me think about ideas of limitation. The thought came to me last night in relation to, there was a whole network of thoughts. Yes, after 9, I don't come on as much. Yeah. There was a thought that I was having, and I'm not going to get into the details of it because we're already at 7:30, and it's time to start doing our reading. But it would occur to me that, to a certain degree, thinking about our limitations and how they affect us, because in some ways, in order for you to have the freedom to do something, there has to be some level of restriction, which is a paradox, right? We think to be free, everything just has to be totally free. But if everything's totally free, then there's no form in which to put the energy. You know, it can be very, very chaotic in the sense of you have something, but you don't have a way to work with it or manifest it in a way that can be sensibly communicated, or that can be, or in a way that you can take whatever your impulse is, or whatever you're feeling, or whatever your drive is, to be able to do it if you can't put it into some kind of a form, and that form is necessarily going to be limited. Yes, I used tarot to ease my mind last night. Yeah, I do it all the time. Let me tell you, it's always good to have these kind of tools. I mean, you know, there's people who can get over reliant on them, but at the same time, it's a lot of times what tarot can do is, when you're in a state of mind, is you can lay them out, and it can kind of give you a sense of like what's kind of really going on in your environment at the moment, and maybe what's going on in your mind, whether or not you're overthinking something, or whether or not maybe we're being defensive about something, or whether or not what we need is maybe we're feeling isolated and need support of others, you know, whatever it is. I mean, whatever comes up in the cards. But I just find that the idea of limitation, it's weird because if you don't have some kind of rules or structure, there's freedom. Think about if there was total freedom. It's a great mirror. Oh, tarot is, yeah, for sure. If you don't have some kind of a limitation, then you don't, that seems to be a precondition of freedom. Because once you choose to do one thing, then you're not choosing to do another. When something takes one form, it's like when you're writing something. I have this trouble when I write all the time, is that I have like 50 different endings that I want to do. Now, technically, I could write all 50 of them, but eventually, if I'm going to end up doing something with it, I have to choose one. You know, we can't choose everything. And I also thought about the fact that in Western society, limitation seems to be couched as human limitation, seems to be couched in the terms of sin. Okay? That there's this idea that your limitations are what make you imperfect, right? And because you're imperfect, you're just naturally a bad person, or you're naturally going to do a wrong thing or make a mistake, and you should be on edge about that all the time, right? And so I don't know. I was just thinking about how ways in which limitation can actually be useful to us, the way it can actually help us kind of figure out our own spot in our own sovereignty rather than having it be something that we're second guessing ourselves on all the time. So I don't know. Because it's getting so late, that's just going to be my little tidbit of wisdom. Maybe I'll continue on that tomorrow. Here's our reading for the day. I need some more of this good pumpkin coffee. Thankfully, thank God for Natalie, who brought me a whole bunch of it the other day, last week. So now it's like I had one pumpkin spice and now I have the other. Yes, like how Saturn as a planet can help us with limits. Exactly. Well, right. The Saturnian influence, we always think of Saturn as being something bad, but Saturn is something, it's kind of like the sculptor who has the block with all the potential, and Saturn has to do with the way in which the work that we have to put into to cut it to make something out of it, right? And they've often said that Saturn is something that we dread or we see as an enemy when we're younger. As we get older, Saturn becomes more of your friend. And if you have a Saturn-dominated chart, then you're probably what they call the little old person, which is like me, because I actually started my life in Saturn Mahadasha. In Vedic astrology, my nakshatra is Pushya, which is Saturn-ruled. And what else is the Saturn in my chart? Well, see, in Western astrology, my 7th house is ruled by Capricorn. So, yeah, this is why they said, well, if you do get married again, you're going to be much older. But of course, it's Sagittarius in the other, so I don't know. But then that pushes Capricorn to my 8th house, so 7th, 8th house. And that's also, although my 8th house is mostly Aquarius, and that's also where Pluto is for me too, so. Isn't Saturn called the Great Eliminator? Can be, because if you think about Saturn, Saturn is a whole, oh gosh, there's so much around the mythology of Saturn. Saturn's sometimes called the Black Sun. And so when you talk about that image in alchemy, remember Saturn is the one, he's the one who devours all of his children until he's challenged by Zeus, okay? And Saturn also is a representative of time. You know, when you see images of Father Time, that's Saturn. Okay, that's the Saturn influence. Or if we think about it archetypally, the Senex, the wise old man, or the old man, that's associated more with, depression and facing death and things like that. That's Saturn also. But of course, in the Roman system, Saturn's also a god of fertility. If you think about the Saturnalia, that is the festival that predated, one of the festivals at least, that predated Christmas. And Saturn is also associated with fertility and the life of things too. In fact, after the war with the Titans, a lot of people don't remember that Saturn's actually made the kind of the ruler of the Elysian Fields, which is the very nice place, almost like the heaven type place within Hades. That's very beautiful, and it's almost like it's the place that's preserved. Or is that Uranus? Uranus certainly has elements of the tower as well. The outer planets, Saturn can have a destructive aspect, but Saturn tends to have more to do with placing obstacles, like slow but steady kind of obstacles. Like when you're anxious to rush towards something, it's like not so fast. You're going to stop and you're going to do it slow and you're going to do it the right way. Or, it's not just going to come easy to you. Like Saturn frequently is about, quality over quantity, Uranus is a planet that's actually, because of its unpredictability, shakes things up. Yeah. So Uranus certainly does have to do with, we've got Uranus and Taurus right now. Certainly it's eliminating a lot of things as well. They all kind of have these kinds of qualities that are not, I don't know. All the planets have their positive and negative attributes. But anyway, here's our central card today. And it's funny, I was thinking of the Seven of Wands. I think when Sudha was talking about when reading, I was thinking, for some reason Seven of Wands popped in my head, and it's the first card that comes up. And this is the stress card. I think a lot of us are feeling today like we're running this way and that way and trying to manage all of these different things. And we're very, very stressed out. And so there's this idea of doing something unimportant. Remember, they always say, when this card comes up, you're like this person on the balloon. You don't want the monkey to pop the balloon here. Just do something unimportant before that happens. Yeah, and the inner feeling of which we're unaware. Again, we have this aloneness card right now. And again, I don't even know that this is necessarily about being alone. It could be that we feel like we're trying to carry the world on our shoulders. We could be feeling like we're doing a whole lot on our own, that we have to rely on our own light and maybe not the light of others. Or maybe that we're walking, I mean, because there's a certain degree, there's a certain amount of our path that we all have to walk alone. There are certain things, there's certain aspects of what we're going through. Like if you're going through transitions, we can think about physical death too, but when you're going through transitions, that's a transition you make alone. Nobody goes with you in that transition. People don't go with you. And even when you're talking about major life changes and transformations, when you have identity changes and so forth, like you can't make, I mean, you might, it's not that you might not have helpers in certain things, but when it comes to certain ultimate big things that are more just about you, about your soul, about who you are, those are only things that happen to you. I mean, other people can give input, they can offer certain things, they may be able to help in small ways, but ultimately they can't make the change for you. You have to do it, okay? So there's this idea that we have to kind of do that. We find that light that's inside of ourselves. That's kind of what everybody's doing, to figuring out where our own North Star is. Changing course requires this hermit energy, right? Well, yes, because there's a certain amount of reflection. In fact, it's interesting because, as I mentioned, we were kind of talking about Saturn, and even though the hermit's really Virgo energy, there's something kind of Saturnian about this, because you have this idea of like almost like the old man, that Senex archetype. And when we think about the old man, when we think about manic depression, okay, Jung would have characterized manic depression as what he would call the Puer and Senex balance or imbalance. Puer being like the boy energy, like the youthful Mercury type energy that's it wants to do everything, and which can sometimes be associated with the mania side of things. Whereas with the Senex energy, that's like the old man, that's like the depressive, focusing on the death, focusing on so that's considered to be more of the less active, more depressive kind of energy. But it's also been pointed out that depression can serve a purpose. I mean, obviously there's very severe clinical depression, and that's a whole other thing. But all of us kind of go through moments where we feel those depressive states, and what they can be is moments that take us out of this and make us just say, you know what, I need to step back. They always say, oh, you're not motivated, you have to try to get remotivated. I mean, if it goes on for a really, really long time, it's an issue. But we may have those short periods of time where it's like everything is just kind of shutting down, and it's like, no, I just need time to be alone. I just need time to be with me. And yeah, if you're going to integrate something, you kind of have to stop and sit and let it marinate, so to speak. Let things kind of move through your system, because the external feeling of which we're aware is completion. This is the World card. Okay, something is ending. Some kind of cycle has ended, and we don't need to keep doing this. This resonates for the person I read tarot for yesterday. Interesting. Yeah, and but I think it's a thing, because with the aloneness card, this is the idea that we need to take a time out from this, because the cycle of running around and this kind of busyness all the time is coming to an end. I think what we're kind of being shown is that this idea that when we're all up in our head all of the time is not really the way to live life. And in fact, we see this change here. We have the Wheel of Fortune, okay? There's change. There's inevitable change. And this is change that happens to us. This is not change that we have control over, okay? A lot of this is about yielding control. And of course, our ultimate outcome card, another 7, we got 2 7s today, is patience. This is the 7 of Pentacles, which, as we said, 7 of Pentacles in some decks is a card of futility, like, oh, I'm putting all this effort in, what's the use? But it's also a card of, okay, I'm looking at what I've done so far and waiting for the harvest. So, yeah. So the harvest, this is basically the harvest is coming. And it's interesting because I had some messages from Azrael yesterday that he seems to refer to everything in terms of moon phases. And I know that this is one of the few months where there's a quarter moon, and that's next week. That is considered to be very important, because that moon is, I'm trying to think what the astrology was around this one, but this moon, I know there's a moon that's going to be in opposition to Pluto, I think. Yes, the moon is opposite Pluto in Capricorn, and they said that's going to be the last time that happens, okay, for like a long, long time. probably in our lifetimes, it's going to be the last time that that happens. So, and of course, when the moon is opposing Pluto, this can bring up a lot of uncomfortable and unpleasant stuff. But the moon also, I feel like, uncovers, like we're working through this phase. We're integrating right now. We're trying to integrate what's new, and at that point, we'll be at a point where we can appreciate and live in the space that's new. Okay, like, until it's kind of like we're excited to move into the new house, but, we're still moving the furniture out of the old house, and we haven't fully decorated the new place yet, and, maybe there's paperwork that's not done, and you know what I mean? Like, it's like, we're ready, we're between places, and you've ever done that when you've moved from one house to another, and it's like, okay, you've got everything in boxes, and you're really nowhere, and you're just kind of like, I just want to get on with this move, So it's kind of that kind of energy, like, yeah, eventually you're going to be in the place, and the boxes are all going to be unpacked, and you'll be at home in the new place, but right now you're kind of not there yet. So this may just be a time. And interestingly, that does bring to mind the idea that it's not so much about what's external, but what's internal. And that may be more what the Hermit represents. It's more what's internal, because there's this idea of being at home wherever you are. Okay, wherever you are able to get into this space where you feel homey or at home. And it's not just simply tied to place. Those of us who are Taurians have a harder time with that, because we're kind of about the physical world and our stuff and our place. But even if you're a Taurian, you can, with the help of Saturn generally, you can kind of get to a point in life where you finally say, okay, even if you start to feel that discomfort, you're like, okay, it's a temporary discomfort. It's going to be fine. So, I'm just going to pull a rune today. I brought my runes down. Okay, yeah, we have algaes. So yeah, we have the rune of protection here. So, this is the rune of the elk, I think. So yeah, so this is basically, I mean, when algae shows up, it's just this idea that whatever we're going through right now, whatever we're moving through, there's definitely a sense here that we're looked after, that we're protected, that it's not, we don't have to worry that what's happening in all this is going to be us falling down a dark hole. Saturn is generally very good with me. Yeah, and again, yeah, depending on with our charts and stuff. You and I, Pat, had talked about Saraswati, and that's a very long Saturn phase, which can bring obstacles. But again, if we recognize it for what it is, it can be something that is liberating to us in a way. We can those obstacles can become the gateways to new things if we let it. But, and probably this is why we're all being told lately to have a sense of adventure, rather than just look at it going, oh no, there's this thing. Yes, definitely, yes. So, yeah. So anyway, we're at quarter of, and so I'm going to go and let all you guys have a good Saturday. I'm going to get myself together. I know, just have a few things going on today. Yep, find the play, exactly. And, figure out, where all that is. Anyway, it's probably a lot more I could say, but we'll wait for another day. You guys are welcome, and yeah, and I know I'll see at least one of you later this morning, and otherwise, everybody have a wonderful weekend, and I'll be here tomorrow morning, not Monday, but I will be here tomorrow morning. So take care, have a great weekend.